2024, 2 days to go to the end of the month. This is Morning Cafe. How hot is a coffee where you are? My name is Fred Ndimuli. Karibu sana.
Asante sana kwa kuungana nasi. Juma ulimi ikiendelea na lugha ya Kiswahili. Karibu sana. This is Morning Cafe Music Stanley Nyeringita. The hashtag today is Biashara Tuesday. We discuss matters forex. Ushaiona watu very serious when it comes to matters forex, and they analyze it for you. But we'll be giving you those experts analyzing that for you this morning.
All right. A quick look at the headlines this morning. And yes, we have the People Daily on our screens. 2.1 billion shillings for schools cut. That's a big headline on the People Daily.
On the Standard, the drugs disaster.
Key Raila allies to land state jobs in Ruto deal. On the Star.
And on the Daily Nation, budgeted graft. We'll be telling you how those numbers are looking like.
Habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo, masharti ya ODM kwa Kalonzo. Wanataka nini? Right, those are just some of the highlights and the headlines on our major dailies this morning. We'll be looking at them much later. For now, how are the roads looking like?
The roads this morning start off with on your way to CBD. If you're moving from Mombasa Road heading into town, you might experience a slight traffic snarl-up before you actually hit Lusaka Road. If you're coming from Lusaka Road heading off to Langata Road, that roundabout looks a bit, there's a slight traffic snarl-up right there. And just before you actually hit Langata Road as well. But it seems to ease off past Langata Road, moving on all the way if you're heading into Tasia and all there. Let's take a look at the weather. So this is according to the Kenya Meteorological Department. It says heavy rainfall as of yesterday, 6 p.m. all the way to Thursday. And they say it is expected, so do expect 24 hours over the South Rift Valley, Lake Victoria Basin, the Highlands, West and Central Highlands as of yesterday. The heavy rainfall is likely to spread to the Southeast Lowlands today and Wednesday, which is tomorrow. It is likely to reduce in intensity on Thursday, the 29th. So the heavy rainfall is likely to be accompanied with gusty winds. And the areas of concern include Narok, Nakuru, Bomet, Kericho, Kisii, Nyamira, Migori, Homa Bay, Siaya, Kisumu, Nandi, Vihiga, Kakamega, Busia, Bungoma, Trans Nzoia, West Pokot, Turkana, Marsabit, Uasin Gishu, Kiambu, Nyeri, Murang'a, Nairobi, Machakos, Kajiado, and Taita Taveta. They have all that, as well as instructions. If you in these mentioned areas, advised to look out for potential floods and flash floods. That is the weather for you. Just taking a look at all that we've been experiencing. Warm temperatures, so the weatherman is advising you. Masaya, weather for one imeisha. Prepare yourself for weather for two.
All right.
Yes.
Let's take a look at the highlights this morning. Now, at least 9 people were killed after a bus they were traveling in veered off the road and crashed near Katangi area along the Kitui-Machakos Road on Monday evening, with over 30 others left nursing serious injuries.
Meanwhile, photos of President William Ruto and Azimio Chief Raila Odinga in rare meeting at President Yoweri Museveni's Kisozi home generate heated discussions on social media.
And the Universities and Colleges a Central Placement Service COOPS portal to remain open until Monday, March 4th, to allow 2023 KCSE candidates to register their choices following extension of an earlier deadline.
curious what they were discussing there with the whole Ankole cows behind them.
Yeah, and a lot has been said about the cows. And I guess we'll be updating you about the Daily Diary later on the show, but for now, let's go straight to the newspapers. Kwenye magazeti hii leo tuanze na The Standard. They talk about the drugs disaster. That's a big headline there on the front page. On substance abuse, data from government reveals the war against drug and alcohol abuse is far from over. The risk of youth getting trapped in the addiction is more real than many have imagined. From the figures, Deputy President ought to take the fight to the coast and Nairobi, not just his central Kenya backyard. It's been given quite some extensive coverage on pages 2 and 3 of The Standard. They talk about laxity in fight against drug abuse and why Gachagua should shift focus from Mount Kenya to other regions as well. Away from that, the other story given prominence on the front page, hustlers raise concerns of a new health scheme. The non-salaried workers wonder what tool will be used to determine how much they need to contribute to the scheme. The story is on page 4. So those who are not salaried, whose deductions towards SHIF will not be coming from their pay slips, are wondering, so how will you judge how much I should pay? And this will begin in June 30th. Under the new scheme, every Kenyan shall apply to the new health scheme by June 30th, while deductions shall commence on 1st of July. Salaried people, of course, shall remit 2.75% of their gross pay to the scheme. Any person above 25 years will also pay to the scheme regardless of whether they are income earners or not. Interesting. Still on the front page of The Standard, why real estate bill is causing jitters, while Senator Alan Chesang says if enacted, the bill will keep fraudsters away from the industry. Land CS says if it wants to devolve housing functions to counties through the back door and should be opposed. You can read that story and find out why the push and pull over the real estate bill. On the top strip of The Standard, more highlights there. Amadi wins round 1 in case against gold dealers. There is an immediate former registrar of the judiciary. In the Financial Standard, wash tag sparks anxiety. Still in business, dividends put pressure on shilling. It is a season where, especially for SACCOs, they are giving dividends after holding their annual general meetings. And in sports, lessons learned from magical Kenya Open. If we could flip the paper, on the back page, a very interesting story of how teammates turn against each other, especially on the pitch. And we have players of yesteryears like Adebayo and Nicholas Benton of Arsenal there. Lee Bauer and Kieron Dyer also exchanging blows on the pitch. And it happens quite a lot. And you can read more on that on page 40 of The Standard. That's it.
Right. More numbers on the Daily Nation. They say budgeted graft, and they say scandal with the country already living beyond its means. Watchdog reports have continued to lay bare wanton wastage and brazen looting. Over the years, as unscrupulous officials collude to inflate national and county budgets with monies earmarked to be stolen, enriching a few elite and burdening a majority of Kenyans with punitive taxes. More story is on page 7. So more context on this, according to the Controller of Budget, that is Dr. Margaret Nyakango, saying that the Controller of Budget accusing the government of using supplementary budgets to sneak in illegal expenditure. And this just reminds us that how former President Uhuru Kenyatta said that about 2 billion cash shillings is the government loses 2 billion cash shillings to theft. So on the front page, they give you the highlights of these numbers. So let me take you through what these numbers say. So 35 billion cash shillings, this is amount paid to non-existent staffers in counties between 2013 all the way to year 2022. 5.7 billion, that's billions lost annually to ghost workers by the national government. And 1.4 billion Kenyan shillings is the amount paid in commitment fees on undrawn government loans. Meanwhile, 1.5 billion Kenyan shillings, this is the amount by which salaries of state officers paid through the Consolidated Fund services were inflated. And just below that, they also have two other numbers. The first one, TSC paid 466.9 million to teachers who are no longer in service in the financial year ended 30th of June 2022. And finally, 412.7 million Kenyan shillings was sent to 9,489 college students between 2017 and 2023 for periods exceeding the durations of their academic programs. And we were taking a look at these numbers last week. And actually, I believe from Monday all the way to Friday, and mostly Daily Nation was plastering numbers on its daily on the front page. Numbers from the Auditor General as well as the Control of Budget. At the bottom there, reprieve as SHRF deductions now pushed to July. Kando hapo, that photo of President William Ruto as well as Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni and Azimio Chief Raila Odinga. They say Museveni hosts Ruto and Raila, so they discussed issues that affect the two countries, including energy and petroleum, as well as Mr. Odinga's bid for the Africa Union Commission chairmanship. Other highlights on the right, succession, Raila allies conditions for Kalonzo. So listen to this. Some politicians allied to opposition chief Raila Odinga have issued Wiper Party boss Kalonzo Musyoka with fresh demands should he wish to earn the support for his 2027 presidential bid. Among them, a demand for him to start organizing and participating in street protests, which have sparked outrage across the eastern region counties of Kitui, Machakos, and Makueni, where Musyoka commands unwavering loyalty. At the top, matters education. A photo of Education CS Ezekiel Machogu. State moves to address woes of students applying for courses. Ones on the back page will be flipping to that in a few. But first, Tycoon Jaffa's farm loses 24-year port grain handling monopoly. And in their Insight the Healthy Nation, they say robbing the sick. As we flip the back page, team to fast-track students' application for college slots. So the government has moved in to address the challenges thousands of Form 4 leavers are facing as they try to apply for courses in colleges and universities. And they say at a glance, it's about 86%. That is a percentage of the 2023 KCPE examination candidates with grade C+ and above that Machogu projects will apply for the placement that has been pushed all the way to next Monday. Finally, we'll work with partners to deal with the flow of dirty cash. That is according to Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndungu. And that in a nutshell is the Daily Nation for you. Tuendelee mbele.
Tuangazie masuala ya siasa yaliyopewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Masharti ya ODM kwa Kalonzo, wanamtaka adhihirishe kwa nguvu kuwa ndiye anayestahili kurithi Raila kama kigogo wa upinzani nchini. Kuna pressure wanasema. Baadhi ya masharti hayo ni kutumia mabavu kuikabili serikali ya Ruto na kuhakikisha ngome yake ya Ukambani imesajili wakazi ambao hawajajisajili kupiga kura. Ameweka picha za watu kadhaa pale, Senator Edwin Sifuna wa Nairobi, Senator Godfrey Otsotsi wa Vihiga na Wycliffe Oparanya aliyekuwa gavana wa Kakamega. Baadhi tu ya wenye wanaweka pressure Kalonzo. Habari zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele pale chini. Manufaa ya mabasi ya umeme. Kwingineko, wauguzi 1,000 zaidi Saudia. Na kwenye spoti, Klopp ataka kuaga Reds kwa kishindo baada ya Liverpool kutwaa taji la Carabao. Sasa kocha aelekeza macho kwa EPL. Tukiangazia vidokezo zaidi pale juu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Ufisadi huanzia katika budget. Ufichuzi wa baini pesa za kuibwa hupangwa wakati wa kuandaa makadirio. Na kwingineko, bima mpya ya afya kukatwa kuanzia Julai, Wakenya wapumua baada ya wizara kurefusha muda wa makato kuanza kunyofolewa. Hizi ndizo habari zilizopewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Masharti ya ODM kwa Kalonzo, wanasema inabidi atumie mabavu kiasi kuikabili serikali ya Ruto.
Right. Let's talk money matters now on the Business Daily. The main headline is how Kenya deal with Gulf oil firms' inflated pump prices, and in context, so higher premium charge adds to consumers' burden, as well as extra costs also arise from funding shortfalls. And they have a graph there that depicts the full prices of per Kenyan shilling in different years as well. Just below it, other stories. Tycoon loses, rather losses port grain handling monopoly. That story by the tycoon Mohammed Jafar. The Mid, voices against wars and climate injustice. Cease fires for the environment is what is written on the placards of whoever are protesting here. Just outside the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, headquarters in Nairobi yesterday. Remember this, the UNEA 6 is continuing. Other stories on the ticker on the right. So first off, what is top news? A respite for workers as SHIF deductions deferred. Matters economy. Cabinet node falls to unlock new power purchase deals. And Fuliza craze squeezes rivals out of microloans business. So they say Safaricom's popular Fuliza overdraft facility has squeezed other digital credit providers out of the microloans market segment. Well, finally, the Life Pull-Out magazine at the very top. They say how I built my three tree houses in Nairobi's Karen. All right.
All right.
It looks like a very interesting place by the way to live.
It looks beautiful.
In a tree house. Away from what we are used to.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
Mujenge and Mawe and everything.
Mawe kila mahali. Let's focus on the People Daily this morning. The big headline, 2.1 billion shillings for schools cat, sagging under heavy weight of debt and bloated wage bill. Ruto's administration makes painful and drastic budget cuts in key ministries, including education. That story is on page 4. If you put that paper and the Daily Nation that speaks about budgeted graft, and you just wonder where we're heading. Other highlights on the front page, they make mention of the president's daughter, Charlene, and they talk about what the president's daughter desires. Stories on page 12. It is much talked about issues stemming from the weekend crusade at the Nyayo Stadium, where Benny Hinn presided over. Also on the front page of the People Daily, that photo that has generated a lot of interest. It also features on the front page of the Daily Nation, the three leaders, President Ruto, President Museveni, and Raila Odinga at that farm in Uganda. And they, right there, handshake loading. Interesting. Elsewhere on that paper, why you should enjoy donkey milk.
Oh, yes. I've even opened the paper here for more context on it, just to understand.
Okay.
And they say matters research. However, recommended further study using a microbiome approach to confirm if the pathogens are truly absent.
And my director is telling me that I'm mispronouncing the name of that animal.
Is it donkey or donkey?
He's insisting it's donkey.
Donkey.
Sounds...
depends on...
We'll leave it there for now.
If you went to Shamahoho polling station or other group.
Tomato.
Yes.
Yeah.
But an interesting story here though. Road donkey or donkey milk safe research finds.
Okay.
Food for thought, literally.
Food for thought. Yeah, literally. Focus on the Star now.
All right, let's move on to the paper. The Star. Kenya allies to land state jobs in Ruto deal. So they say Raila's road to AU, and they give you the plan, the selection process, as well as the skill and attributes, and the additional factors. So the plan is he'll be nominated by President William Ruto. Musalia Mudavadi will lead the campaign, the selection process via consensus, or at least a 2/3 majority vote by AU member states, and can be nominated by any member state, and consultation with other members is key. Skills that he'd need: proven leadership, diplomatic skills, visionary leadership, understanding of African issues, commitment to Pan-Africanism, fluency in at least one of the AU working languages. Additional ones, gender balance, regional representation. That story has made 3/4 of the paper. But other highlights on the bottom. First off, Maraga report, how police hiring slot are auctioned for 600,000 Kenyan shillings. Another one, city grocery shop thriving on healthy diet demand. And finally, Khalifa, a fearless white Kanzu activist who survived Moi regime, was on page 22. At the very top, no other highlights. It is on Tuesday, so they just remind you to pick your free paper. That's the stuff for you.
All right, our Q2 crossover into Uganda and see the headlines. And I'll start off with the New Vision for the reason that they've also used the same image that you're using. It's also of interest to them. Museveni meets Ruto Odinga in Kisozi. And they talk about the president saying, or rather State House Uganda saying that they three leaders discussed issues of mutual interest. So yes, that picture is not just of interest in Kenya, also Ugandans are finding it interesting as well. But the main headline on the front page of the New Vision in Kampala, Uganda, talks of stiff cut-off points for S5. It's a school system. Top schools increase enrollment, 93,000 for TVET. That story is on page 4 and 5. That's a story given prominence on the New Vision today. So yes, those are two the main discussions as far as the New Vision is concerned. If we take a look at the Daily Monitor, 100 students join S1 using forged results. Matters education as well, and forgery of academic papers featuring on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Head teacher of a primary school in Western Uganda has been taken in for questioning and is said to appear in court after it emerged that more than 100 pupils from her school may have gained admission to secondary schools using forged primary leaving examination results and now face expulsion. Very sad indeed. Also on the front page of the Daily Monitor, opposition MPs denied access to Loboa Hospital site. And this is a common occurrence in Uganda. Police stopping opposition leaders from access, sometimes even leaving their homes. And that's the Daily Monitor, big headlines in Uganda today.
Right. Let's move from Kampala to Kigali in Rwanda. And they say that Rwanda is leading daily, the New Times. So Rwanda finally passes law on GMO, genetically modified organisms. And Rwanda joins a few African countries that have biosafety or GMO regulating laws. More is on page 3. But an interesting story, you'll find it on page 2. They say stunting Rubavu to provide 8,000 chicken to vulnerable families. Interesting one there. And if you come from the Luya land, should you? Are you
we have enough chicken. We have enough chicken already.
Other highlights on this paper: regional lawmakers condemn ethnic violence in DR Congo, and pictured there, top government officials in Rwanda. That is what is happening in Rwanda.
All right, we cross to Tanzania. And we start off with a Citizen Matters business in Tanzania. UK credit body solutions for Tanzanian businesses. The UK's Export Credit Agency has expressed a readiness to support eco-friendly projects in Tanzania with a credit guarantee of nearly £2 billion, which is about 6.4 trillion Tanzanian money. Other stories, why investors should consider fertilizer value chain. And elsewhere, what 680 billion Tanzanian shillings deal on fuel storage facility at port means. Also matters health. Aga Khan Hospital adopts new approach to tackling obesity. And on the top strip, Ngorongoro eyes 200 billion shillings after royal tour boost. Those are the headlines there. A lot of numbers on the front page of the Citizen in Tanzania.
Mwishowe kwenye gazeti la Mwananchi, taarifa kuu pale, hatua kwa hatua, saa 2 na dakika 20 ndani ya SGR kutoka Dar hadi Moro. Kwingineko, jaji mkuu asema haki si kushinda kesi peke yake. Jaji mkuu huyo aliyechapishwa picha lake ni Profesa Ibrahim Juma. Sema kuwa ni muhimu elimu ikatolewa kwa wananchi waelewe haki si kushinda kesi peke yake. Amesema sheria ni mizani. Taarifa nyingine kuu, mzigo wa DPP kesi ya wateule wa rais. Na hivi ndio vidokezo kwenye gazeti hili ambayo inaturuhusu sasa tuingie kwenye caricature ya leo. Even as you flip and look for them, I'll start with the People Daily on page 10. We have a huge gentleman there being escorted, and in front of him is a judge who's kicked a mwananchi into the maximum prison, and is probably actually carrying a small bag of money. And the huge gentleman says, "Excuse me, where is the entrance?"
Yeah, the money is too big for prison.
And even himself,
he can't fit.
Yes, he can't fit, and he's asking even the soldier on the watchtower, "Where is the entrance?" And he's actually smiling. Ni kama hatishwi.
All right, that's a cartoon on the People Daily. On the Standard, we have an image of county bosses sitting on suppliers. They're talking about pending bills, which is a carrot, being used as a carrot towards the 2027 election. And you know that statement in Nairobi where Governor Sakaja says, lazima iwak?
Lazima iwak.
Now here he says, lazima you walk. Lazima utatembea hadi 2027. Yeah? So yes, that's a carrot. On page 19 of the Daily Nation, matters to do with ODM succession. And you have an image there, a caricature of the ODM leader, Raila Odinga, seated inside a room with his political ally, the Governor Siaya County, James Orengo. And then someone who looks like Junet Mohammed comes in and tells him, well, your family has named your successor. Interestingly, his brother has named someone else as a possible successor. His wife, Aida Odinga, has come out to support someone else. So matters ODM succession still big discussion in as far as the political field is concerned.
I'm wondering why the gentleman looking like Junet has horns.
Amemea pembe. Amemea pembe. Those are the cartoons on our dailies this morning, and after the break we'll be having a State of the Nation discussion with my panelists. Let me just let's beam that image there.
There you have it.
There we have it. Alex Mwadhi, political analyst, will be in studio alongside Barnabas Kiplagat Boit, political strategist and advisor, as well as Daniel Orogo, political analyst as well. This gentleman will be helping us look at the headlines this morning. Of course, the biggest discussion being, and if you looked at social media, a lot of interest and curiosity and curious excitement about the pictures coming from Uganda. That meeting between President Yoweri Museveni when he hosted President William Ruto and Raila Odinga at his home.
Oh, yes.
Later on
at around 8 a.m., we do expect to have Alex Karanja, CEO of Scope Markets, as well as Timothy Kiandri, a professional forex trader. Just understanding when you talk about forex trading, how forex guys are always waiting for around 4 p.m. there, 3:30, 4 p.m. there, when the NYC markets are open and the bell is rung.
Interesting discussion about forex trading, because I've seen a lot in social media, people saying that these people are making too much money, and I don't understand. So yes, the truth will come out today.
And even the risks involved, I mean, you could actually lose about more than $1 million. You
can imagine if you're trading against the dollar and then the shilling starts rallying like it did a week ago. What happens in that case?
What happens?
Of course, you can be part of these conversations online through our social media pages on X, TV47 News, and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. You're watching Morning Cafe. watching Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. Time for us to take a look at the headlines. State of the Nation. Today we're privileged to have Alex Mwathi, Barnabas Kiplagat, Boit and Daniel Orogo, political analysts and commentators of note. And karibuni sana, gentlemen.
Yes,
I know there's a lot of interest in those photos coming from Uganda, and we'll get to that. I've seen even the same photo has been splashed on the front page of the New Vision. So it's not just big news in Kenya, it is also big news in Uganda this morning. President Yoweri Museveni hosting President William Ruto and Azimio Chief Raila Odinga at his farm in Kisozi, in front of a very big herd of cattle, Ankole cattle. But before we get to that, there's a headline that should be of grave interest to any Kenyan. Budgeted graft or budgeted corruption, if you wish. That's on the front page of the Daily Nation. And I want us to start with that. And it reminds us that a former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, said once that the government loses 2 billion shillings daily to theft. So how does this theft happen? With the country already living beyond its means, watchdog reports have continued to lay bare wanton wastage and brazen looting over the years as unscrupulous officials collude to inflate national and county budgets with monies earmarked to be stolen, enriching a few elite and burdening a majority of Kenyans with punitive taxes. The story is on page 7. And we are currently going through the rigors of budget making this year. The budget policy statement should be before the National Assembly anytime ahead of the finance bill. So the audit reports continue to uncover wastage running into billions of shillings. And the question is, because we already as a country are living beyond our means, that's what we've been told. We have a huge debt burden, and yet there's a lot of wanton wastage and brazen looting within the government offices. And some of the highlights, at least 35 billion shillings has been paid to non-existent staffers in counties between 2013 and 2022. 35 billion shillings is a lot of money. It could do a lot for this country. Some 5.7 billion lost annually to the national government to ghost workers, people who do not exist, 5.7 billion. 1.4 billion paid to commitment fees to undrawn loans. So you apply for a loan, you're asked for a commitment fee, you pay the fees, but you don't bother with the loan. That money is non-refundable. Where does it go? At least 1.5 billion in inflated salaries of state officers paid through the consolidated fund. Last week we were talking about the Teacher Service Commission, which paid 467 million shillings to teachers who are no longer in service. And that was just in the financial year 2022. 412 million shillings disbursed to students for periods exceeding the duration of academic programs between the financial year ending June 2017 and 2023. This has been happening over time. It means that government officials have found a way of making sure they make this money. But swali ni hii pesa iko wapi? Alex, where is this money? We are told that we are in dire straits. We do not have money. That's why we have to make do with a lot of taxation. Hii pesa inaenda wapi?
Interesting question. You know, the surprising thing is that we are shocked. That's a surprising thing.
We shouldn't be. We
shouldn't. Because over the many years that I've been an adult in this country, there's a person called the Auditor General at some point, and this was in the past, before the new constitution, was really an appointee of the president. And every Auditor General have always gone to Parliament or released some report to show wanton wastage of money in the previous year. And if you remember in the past, it used to be that the Auditor General would almost review books 5 years old. So really, 2023, the Auditor General is reporting the books of 2018. And they would show the wanton wastage in 2018, in 2023. And when you read it, it's like, when you read it, it's like it's a current, current news. And what has happened is that over the years, nothing has happened to anybody who have stolen government money or misused the government money. So the government officials have known there is no consequences. And if there are no consequences, why would you worry? Why would you bother? To an extent that the president himself, and is quoted there last year but one, I think, he said that we are losing 2 billion shillings on corruption. If you consider that for a whole year, that was about 800 billion shillings. At that time when he was talking about our budget was, I think, about 2 trillion. So really he was saying that 40-50% of the total money that we budget is stolen. For him to say that, he must have had a background, because he's very well briefed. He had had a background how they came up with 2 billion shillings. He didn't just stand up and say 2 billion. Nothing happened. Nobody was arrested. Nobody was. So why would we be surprised that there is misuse? You know, we are saying that there's no money. And I was telling my friends just before we started that somebody was telling me, when you say we have no money, please say I don't have money.
There's a lot of money.
Because if you go drive from Nairobi, in whichever direction you go, the amount of development that is going on means that there's a lot of money in this country. Because anybody will tell you an indicator of economic activity in a country is a building industry. And buildings are coming up like pork ponds all over this town. Meaning that money is there. It's you who doesn't have money.
So we have an unaccounted for economy.
An unaccounted for economy. And what you're trying to do is to try and do that accounting by this new process of trying to get taxes from Mamboga.
But wait, it means people in the public service must be very comfortable. If this money is going around this way, I know suppliers too and other officers get a lot of this money. But as Bwana Mwade says, it is a systemic issue that does not appear to be going anywhere, despite the fact that we may express shock at these headlines.
Thank you, Fred. First, let me say it is disheartening for us to read such headlines. It's not the first time, and it will not be the last time we are hearing of such news. It is time we get serious as a country to really work on corruption and efficiency and inefficiencies in the public sector. For example, I would want to dwell on the issue of people who are paid salary and they are non-existent. When you retire from public service, they're supposed to delete your payroll number, and you are deleted from government payroll. As to how TSC paid retired teachers or people who no longer work with TSC or they have left the service for whatever reasons, shows you that we are not committed, we are not serious. And you see, the wastage initially was at the national level. Now it has been moved to the county. I mean, we do not have an example where we say a particular county has moved beyond wastage. And, like every sector, there's inefficiencies, there's corruption. And unless we take matters corruption seriously, we are likely not to progress as a country. I would take issue with what the former president said of 2 billion being lost daily. He was head of state. He had all the state machinery to stop this. He was obligated to do this for the Kenyan people. He did not do. It baffles everybody that we talk about corruption, and as my friend had said here, there has never been any consequences that somebody stole. He was taken to prison, and everything that he stole was returned back to the people of Kenya, and the guy becomes destitute. That one serves as a deterrent to any other person. But you come to an office, you are told the guy who was here stole 2 billion. He's enjoying his life. He's taking his children for education abroad. Nothing stops you from doing the same. Right. And the same officers who are in that ministry or in that department will tell you, boss, the guy who was here, this is how we helped him. We can also help you.
But my issue is, Bwana Orogo, it's a hopelessness by the country's leadership to do anything. The former president said, yes, we're losing 2 billion shillings through corruption daily. Now we have a president who's opted now, instead of even going after those ones, will just tax Kenyans a bit more to fund this, including this budgeted corruption. Because if we're talking about a budget of 4.1 trillion shillings, I'm sure a quarter of that will be lost through this same route.
And I think the figures, Alex Mwathi has just populated the figures, what we risk losing as a country per year. If you're losing 2 billion shillings per day through fictitious means to lose the money, I think there are several factors that needs to be put into retrospect on this issue, Fred. One is that the issue is of budgeted corruption. I think we are looking at a situation that casts an aspersion on the integrity of the leaders that we elect and those that are put into this position to serve. I am sure that when anyone is called upon to serve in the office, our Constitution really is very clear on the integrity, the expectations of a public servant. And then there's a public service charter that you always sign that really outlines what is expected of you. So on the bit of personal attributes that we are slowly losing as we are eroding what is required of us in even Article 10 of the Constitution, of the national values, and principles of governance. This is no longer, a call to public service. It's a call for people to line up their pockets, and rise up to their stock prices. But what is wearisome, as you've just said, is the historical intention by successive regimes not to tackle matters of corruption. And the former regime, initiative has just been mentioned on set. There was an attempt by President Uhuru Kenyatta. It's an attempt. Remember his State of the Nation address, when he came forward and talked about the list of those who are corrupt and inadvertently fired them, pending their cases that were there. An attempt that has been made in his term, and I'm not saying probably he did the best, but you can see that at least there was an attempt. There are cases that were put, that were being prosecuted by, the initiatives, the institutions that are given the authority to do that, the Director of Criminal Investigation, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. But what we are seeing, the country is decried into a position where, you remember, there was an allegation that we are losing cases in court of former civil servants and public servants who have corruption cases to handle. This morning, even on the splashes, you can see that former governors, former deputy governors, and who is who in this country are lined up for prosecution. The question is, when do we see this prosecution to the dead end? That is the problem. What is the accountable means of money that is refunded to the public? But also, we cannot forget that this particular fictitious payment are actually being done because of loophole into our legal laws. You see, Dr. Nyakanga just mentioned...
I want us to focus on those loopholes because is it possible to see... Because we're simply talking about, fine, take people to court. That hasn't worked. Is there a different way we can approach this? Probably have better systems in place. For example, technology has really improved. And while former auditor generals who had to work with a lot of paperwork and following the paper trail, right now with the digital world, you can actually have proper systems and it would be much easier to follow this trail. Don't you think that would be a better way? Because if at all prosecution through the courts of law has failed till now, isn't it time that we look for a different solution?
A system is as good as the people who run it. Because systems are man-made and they have to be managed by human beings. If the people have no morals that manage it, the system will have no morals. In 1969, I think it's important that we remember everything grows from a very small thing. In 1969, President Jomo Kenyatta, when he was faced with the first issue of corruption around that time, and the issue was that his officers were corrupt, he used his language, the Kenyan Greek language. And basically what he said is that, there's a saying that say, like a small bird, just hide yourself. And he said that do whatever you do, but if you get caught, don't say you're mine. And from that moment, corruption was made legal illegally. To an extent, the corruption you see is legal, but illegally. In that everyone knows that everybody is stealing, but everyone is happy about it.
It's okay.
So whatever system you put in place, as long as a people, we continue to accept whatever that is thrown in us, and especially in terms of viewing others as successful when they have more money, without really questioning where did he get it from? What has he produced to be able to be what he is? Until that time, as a people, unless we change that, nothing will change. You can have as many quotes as you want. Allow me to say this. You can have as many quotes as you want. You can have as many organizations like my friend is mentioning as you want. But they will all be talk shows.
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. I'm talking about issues like things like the e-citizen that the president has come up with and says this one will streamline payments to government through one pay bill number. And I'm wondering, other solutions, digital-based solutions, could probably be the answer now that our courts of law have failed us.
Now, Fred, let me just shock you. I will go further than what Daily Nation have said about budgeted corruption. Look at our county assemblies. That is a real example of budgeted corruption. There is a money set aside by the counties, by the county assemblies, to oversight, and I mean the money used for by the county assembly. So instead of them using that money to oversight the counties and the projects done by the county, they go out of the country. They visit Singapore, they visit Israel, they go to the US, they go everywhere. In my ward, why would my MCA go to Singapore? We don't have a say in my ward. What are they going to oversight there? But you see, legally, they have budgeted that money for corruption. Instead of using it to fix water for our people and roads and infrastructure.
Are you saying it would even be difficult to find any wrongdoing in some of the actions taken?
I mean, they would say this budget is made, a provision has been made for the county assembly. Let me show you further. National Assembly. A report like this of corruption is done. So what the National Assembly will do is that MPs will, say the Committee of Parliament, will investigate an issue. They will go to Mombasa, stay in a 5-star hotel. They are paid allowances for investigating. Instead of them calling the DPP and the DCI and the Chief Justice to show cause why action, you know, their oversight is not on their allowances. Their oversight is to make sure that the state officers who are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that there is no corruption are effective in their work. If not, they can impeach them or ask the president to fire them. But instead, like given you can remember the contaminated sugar, the MPs went to investigate it. They also ask money from the people involved. So how can an MP be investigating? You see, their oversight is DPP, you are charged with the responsibility of prosecution. Have you prosecuted these people? They need to call the DPP to the plenary of parliament where there is, but you see, sometimes even they go out of the country to investigate non-existent issues. And that is a burden on the taxpayer.
Right.
For example, like I saw a case
of... for a break, yes.
Okay.
We can come back and continue with this discussion because it would appear it's part of the system, and we all seem a bit hopeless or helpless when it comes to this. I'll give you an opportunity once we come back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47. Time for a break now. Right, welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV47. I'm still in studio with Alex Mwathi, Boit, and Daniel Orogo, and we want to finish this discussion about budgeted corruption, budgeted graft. And I keep insisting that the systems up until now have failed, and we need a different approach to fighting corruption. And I'm proposing that probably online or digital means could be of help. But you seem to disagree with me completely, Bwana Orogo.
Of course. I mean, you remember the introduction of IFMIS, because you remember by that time there was an allegation that cash means of payment was a leeway to a number, was providing a number of avenues to corruption, and therefore technology that you are proposing was introduced as a mechanism to curb these fictitious ways of people, money, somebody withdrawing in paper, in envelopes and all these, bags. And you remember, but still failed because you remember there's even a case where someone had invaded IFMIS and directed those kind of payments. So whatever I am looking at is my point of disagreement, and I was agreeing with what Mwathi was talking about, that a system is good as the personalities. Fred, in 2002, however much young some of us were, the leadership philosophy of Mwai Kibaki brought in, and pulled people towards a collective action towards corruption. And by that time, if some of us remember, you had seen a number of people's arrest in the streets of traffic officers who were engaged, in pilferage. You had seen a number of things when the country was very positive, and the ratings of the president in terms of his philosophy of leadership and dealing with corruption was given a number of headlines by that. So I am
during the same regime that we saw the Anglo-leasing scandal, which is another budgeted corruption.
Of course, what I'm saying is, had we onboarded the belief that a leader can be firm and can mobilize masses, in terms of having a firm decision on corruption, without really, kulegeza kamba mahali, then I think that could have been.
Is that even possible?
That's why
Is that even possible?
With you,
the
Fred,
fact that our thinking as a people, as a society, can actually change.
Let me say on a personal, on a personal basis, I had an opportunity before to ask the president because we, 2002, around June, July. In a platform that was organized by Chatham House, that I belonged to a member, and we had an opportunity when he appeared on Chatham House. The question that I asked the president on record, what is your idea of fighting graft? Because by that time, you remember, on the other competitor were lauding him as the face of corruption. And I asked him, what is your issue? He said three things. One is that he would invest on institutions, and I quote him, is on record what he said. I would invest on institutions that is seen as an independent, that would fight corruption. In this sense, it was AACC, it was the DCR, it was the DPP, and finally, where most citizens believe that corruption can be given a blow in the judiciary. So however much, and I know, probably from your angle, I know what you're trying to do.
22 years later,
you want us,
the judiciary and the institutions that are so-called independent are not really helping us.
Because that is bigger than this.
My question is, because we need to move forward from this. We need to move forward from this. Those institutions have been given independence even by our constitution. Yet the result is still not there.
Fred, at the danger of repeating something that I keep saying, because I think sometimes there are certain lessons that need to be repeated many times. A couple of thousands years before the birth of Christ, the Greeks introduced the so-called democracy that we see here. In those Caesar's time and all that, where the court used to elect leadership. And Aristotle said that democracy is the worst form of government because you're asking a cobra and a professor to elect a leader. Cobra has no idea about economic policies. Professor may have, but may have his own interests. So the guy who comes out is a guy who is in between. And the story he gave was very simple, that a dentist vied with a position with a sweet seller, sweet trader. And the campaign for the dentist is that I will help you if you have problems with your teeth. I'll pull them out. And the sweet seller told the people that this guy is actually selling pain. Because when we pull out teeth, you feel a lot of pain. Who did the people elect?
The sweet seller.
They elected the sweet seller. And their teeth became a problem, and the dentists were unable to do that. The point at the end of all that story was that the Greeks determines that there are only three kinds of people in a society. We have this I say very often, but I think it's critical, that there is the idiots, tribesmen, and citizens. Idiots is not used as a curse word for the Greeks. It's those people who are selfish, people who cheat in exams, people who will do all sorts of things for their own selfish end. Tribesmen were not necessarily just ethnic. It's people who coalesce together so that for selfish ends. And the citizens were people who cared about everybody else. Now, they said if any society, the majority of people are idiots and tribesmen, that society has a problem of progressing. If you do a review of Kenya, and sometimes it's so easy to point at others without realizing that three fingers are pointing at you. We are so comfortable seated even on sites like this. I think every station in Kenya this morning, they are ambassading the government. They are ambassading Ruto and everybody else. But everybody, as they point at him, they don't realize three fingers point at them. If you look at Kenya, majority of Kenyans are in which category? As a community. We are 95%, in my view, we are idiots and tribesmen. So the leaders that come above us are part of this, because they say that ugali comes from the flour that you use. If you use bad flour, then ugali will be bad. To an extent, that until we change our thinking as a people and start looking at this thing correctly, because we would be very happy to lambast the government for budgeting corruption. But how many of us build houses with plans that are approved? How many of us drive cars without overlapping?
The beneficiaries of this money are not necessarily leaders in government. It is actually public servants.
Exactly. Not public service. Not public service. Because the public civil servants that benefit from these people have their brothers and sisters who benefit from it. So they are happy. As it were, it's like it's not me.
Okay. So it still leaves us with more questions than answers, because I was hoping to get a solution or a way forward, a newfound solution in 2024 than what President Mwai Kibaki offered in 2022. But I'll leave that conversation for another day. The institutions, DCI, ESCC, we've kept on asking questions, but we still don't have answers. Judiciary, we still don't have any conviction in as far as corruption is concerned. We are yet to see one conviction up until now.
That's true.
It's unfortunate, but that's where we leave it. Fine, let's move on to other discussions that are making headlines. And let's now focus on this big, interesting photos. And if my director can help me with some of those photos from Kisozi rural home of President Yoweri Museveni. And yes, we have the Ugandan president in his usual white shirt and kofia. And the two Kenyan leaders with incidentally or coincidentally, blue kaunda suits. I don't know if they had agreed. Now, this is a kind of photo that changes everything in as far as Kenya is concerned. I remember back in 2008 when Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga finally put pen to paper on that grand coalition agreement, and that changed politics moving forward. A few years before that, we had seen when NDP, is it LDP, joined KANU. And there was something similar, and it changed the politics for a few years. Later on, we saw what happened at the steps of Harambee House when Raila Odinga once more shook hands with Uhuru Kenyatta, and it changed the politics for the next 5 years after the handshake. So are we seeing something similar? Hence the excitement and curious optimism, probably cautious excitement to some extent. Kenyans don't know what exactly this is, but there's a lot of discussion, Bwana Boit, online. What should we, because yes, it's easy to dismiss and say, it's just another political day, but is it?
Now, I want to make my observation in two aspects. One, by the president endorsing Raila for the African chairmanship, we Kenya intends to increase its influence in the geopolitical space. Like we want to grow beyond our own country. And it's a good step. We close the divisions which are in the country, and we move forward as a country. The other issue is the local politics. I mean, the local politics, all the tensions and everything else is now gone to. But again, if in political science there's something called quantitative analysis, which actually uses inferential statistics. If you look at the politics of Raila Odinga for a long time, and see, this is something that is unique about the Kenyan politics. Every time there's a big issue or a big division, the country is able to close ranks and move forward, and despite the bitterness and sometimes very contested elections. It's something positive. All what we need to do is seize the moment and fix what is wrong with our country. Now, issues to do with like now IEBC should be fixed. Issues to do with what is ailing our country should be fixed. Because if there is no political tensions and turmoil and
is
leaders...
this what we're seeing now, that now we are setting the stage for fixing and remedying all that is wrong?
I would urge the president to seize the moment and really impact on the lives of Kenyans. That is the most important thing. Because you are, I mean, political opponent is now in talking terms with you. We help Raila advance the African agenda. He's been a Pan-Africanist for a long time, and let him champion what is good for Africa. And the president should seize the moment to stop the politics around the country. And I would implore that, you know, the issue, even if I'm seeing some issue on the assignment line succession politics, let's not talk about 2027. Let's fix what is wrong.
How can we really avoid talking about 2027? We know every time we have such a deal, we see such a photo, then it's a one thing that we'll be talking about for the next 5-10 years.
Yes, and of course, this is the politics of succession that has begin taking shape. I probably beyond the matching suits. And you've really seen such particular situations that defines the beginning of the Kenyan succession politics. You've alluded to it, from all KANU era to post-election violence handshake to Uhuru Kenyatta and to now. Fred, you see, one of the things we need to underscore and tell Kenyans first is that we had a conversation with Alex, and we are telling Kenyans, these people have got a shared interest. We need to tell Kenyans who are watching us that, you see, it is now evident that Kenyans are remaining to take care of themselves. I do not foresee a situation where there's going to be successive reforms minus an official strong opposition. There's no opposition politics in Kenya if this is taking shape. And that means that Kenyans are left at the masses of people rising up and just holding the government to account. I don't see the future of Kenyan, government being held to account. Mm-hmm. Because for sure, and politically speaking, we do not have a strong opposition. We could have relied on parliament. But as we keep on saying, parliament, there's a raid on parliament. We do not have a parliament. What we have is, I don't know whether to call it, something a mongrel of parliament or not. We are now looking towards a judiciary, which I don't know whether is going to survive the onslaught. It's good to speak the truth in cameras and tell Kenyans that indeed as we move forward, and as people are talking about, can we now, think about Raila's position at the helm of the AU Commission chairmanship, which I would want also to delve in a little bit. Because when we are last week...
As far as this is concerned, you're saying he meant...
this one is gone. Last week, Raila is gone. I mean, for this, and this is why I want to tell you, first is the chairmanship of, the journey to the chairmanship of the AU Commission. Why it is gone is because of the people who are backing him. Last set we were here and we touched a little bit about it. It seems it's now coming clear that the government and through the governing party has thrown their weight behind his bid. And that is a score because that is the procedure Because first of all, the government of the day where you're coming from must propose you. I was worried a little bit until yesterday about our relationship, especially on Raila's bid with the other East African countries and other Eastern African countries, because then there's a distinction between East Africa and Eastern Africa, which the term now, we have to have a support. It seems that the father, the grandmaster of the Eastern African politics, have now accepted the bid. President Museveni is a critical pillar when it comes to the regional politics. And for me to see this, and for his statement yesterday, because I looked at his X account, he is approved that he is now willing to lobby, which was my worry until yesterday, because in other platforms I had foreseen this a situation where it was not going to be possible. Okay. With the regional relationship that we had before, the trade wars with Eastern African countries. But in terms of this, may I now,
But before we even get to that bid of the AU, I'm more concerned about what it does to Kenya.
Yes.
And how this kind of movements, this kind of actions have really changed what the country talks about for a long period of time, Bwana Mwathi. When Raila joined KANU, that preceded now the change and now the incoming government after all that happened. Should we expect something that's consequential with this?
Politics has become a very selfish game and idiotic in a Greek way that is always about me, myself. Because with this very simple photograph, you are right. This is similar to the Harambee House famous handshake. Exactly the same. It's exactly the same as the others, and you have alluded to in terms of the opposition, so-called opposition leader. He has never been an opposition leader. Mm-hmm. He's always been part of government. Always been part of government. Mm-hmm. When that moment happens, there's a complete shift of politics. This is a reward that let me run the show here. Just take this small token of appreciation home and enjoy your family. And this definitely means that the landscape of politics changes. If you see on another article, the Raila allies now are telling Kalonzo, prove to us that you can be our leader by leading us in demonstrations. Mm-hmm. They were very categorical. That for that as a measure of you being man enough to be able to lead. By removal of Raila Odinga from the forefront of the Kenyan politics, it means that now William Ruto can rule this country alone. Mm-hmm. Just like when you remember in 2018 when there was a handshake, they became brothers with you remember it was Mulevi and Muganga. Mm-hmm. They became brothers on 18th of March, and now they were found together at every meeting. And Uhuru had the best time of ruling. Mm-hmm. If Ruto had not become an opposition within government, which was also choreographed, because they were friends, and they're still friends.
You believe that was choreographed?
You see, when I told you these guys are friends, you assume that I was talking
about Ruto's opposition in government. That was
yeah, they were still friends. It was politics. Mm-hmm. You had to create a narrative for the next election. Mm-hmm. Because you notice in Kenya, every year when we have campaign, there was always a narrative. And the narrative, for you to create narrative, hustler narrative.
Who would you say is should take credit for that choreography, if at all that was choreographed?
On 18th of March, 2002, if you allow me to go back to history, there was a meeting in Kasarani. It was a KANU meeting. Mm-hmm. And that meeting was chaired by none other but the Kenyan professor of politics, Daniel Arap Moi. And in that meeting, LDP merged with KANU. And in that meeting, Moi gave you leadership for this country mm-hmm. for 50 years, because he said, KANU will rule this country for 100 years. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, he was telling you, these are your leaders. Who did he pick? Raila Odinga became the Secretary General of KANU from mm-hmm. an opposition position, and he became a key player in that. He appointed 4 vice presidents, Ngala, Uhuru Kenyatta, Mudavadi. He appointed Ruto as organizing, not organizing secretary, but director of elections, and Kalonzo Musyoka as organizing secretary. And you look at the landscape in Kenya, both government and so-called opposition, these are the kingpins.
So it was Moi's choreography.
It's Moi's choreography.
Bwana Boita, you were disagreeing with some assertion by Bwana Mwati.
I disagree with Mwati that it was choreographed. One, there was broken relationship between the president and the deputy, and it went to levels that was very unprecedented. And one, the intention of the president was very clear, not to hand over power to the current president. The intention that he wanted Raila to be president. It's only that they failed, but even the attempts they made at Bomas of Kenya, I mean, trying to mess up with the elections up to Supreme Court and all that, you know, it's a fact. Their relationship was totally broken, and the former president never wanted the current president to succeed or to take the reign of leadership in this country. So what I'm saying is Kenya has been a big boy in Africa for a long time, but over time our geopolitical influence waned and we lost it. Other people came into play. It's a good, I want us to be optimistic that it is something good for us to have Raila Odinga.
Yet, Bwana Boita, there are so many other possible candidates for this job, even coming from Kenya.
Yes.
We have a retired president who's still young. Kalonzo Musyoka is also a good diplomat.
Amina Mohamed was contested in 2017.
Why Raila and why this coming together? That's a question.
I don't want to read politics here.
No.
Let me look at the persona of Raila Odinga,
Okay.
and being the guy who,
all right,
who
fair
can take
enough.
over.
Then let's move to this discussion about the succession in opposition.
Yes.
Bwana Mwati alluded to it. It is also on the front page of Taifa Leo. Masharti ya ODM kwa Kalonzo. Baadhi ya masharti hayo ni kutumia mabavu kuikabili serikali ya Ruto na kuhakikisha ngome yake Ukambani imesajili wakazi ambao hawajajisajilisha kupiga kura. Now, the question is that it appears that the opposition is still intent on maintaining its DNA as the opposition that has been, with Raila Odinga at the helm. And is that still possible? That the nature and the kind of leadership that Raila Odinga has provided for the opposition for all these years, that we can still pursue that brand of opposition politics with his exit?
And confrontational. I mean, that's the word you're using, where it's brazen, it's conflict.
Is it even a legitimate expectation on some of the leaders that are there currently?
I think it's one way of trying to knock out Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, because that is not his nature of politics. Clearly, he's posed as a diplomat and as one who is a reconciliating figure. His politics is calm and reasonable, and I think, Fred, you've had a lot of sentiments that has been mentioned. Alai has been mentioning here that if he has to choose, if the party has to choose between Kalonzo and someone else, they would definitely not choose him. And turning him that he's not really been strong in quotes and formidable enough to lead opposition politics. I think one, for me, this is it showcases the turmoil that is within the succession of opposition politics. The proposal, and there is a catch that we need to be very careful with, because I was asking you in the last set, if Honorable Raila, that my colleague is refusing to mention why him, if Honorable Raila is actually proposed for that particular bid, what happens for the position of the official opposition that has been provided for by the NITCO report? Who occupies this position? Because there's also a contest within the Azimio coalition. Because then it means that
the reason for these kind of demands right now.
Is actually the reason why we are having issues within the coalition. Because the proposal is, if that suffices, then it means if Raila is out of sin, it may be occupied by the deputy who ran. Now look at the deputy situation. Because the pundits will now again say, this deputy, who is Honorable Martha Karua, how many votes did he have leave alone in parliament, but even how many votes did he have in the members of county assembly? NAC Kenya, probably you guys can correct me if there is even an MCA, with NARC Kenya, so it's 0. Then it could well say then Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, who is the probable candidate, but Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka has equally led the committee for National Dialogue Committee, but that. You see this kind of, gerrymandering that is within the coalition causing chaos. But for me, I think the question then still lies in that the Azimio coalition needs to have, a stronger parliamentary retreat and maybe decides and talk about face-to-face and realities of the succession within the coalition.
In the short term, is there a need for a confrontational opposition leader, just to mirror what Raila Odinga has been doing? Probably we might change our system of opposition politics to a much calmer kind, but in the short term, is that the need?
The conversation we are having is, we are having it before its time, because there's an assumption that because Ruto met Raila in Uganda, meaning that he was asking for endorsement of, we do the necessary interpretation that he was asking for endorsement of Museveni, which is a political thing, even as Boyd says that he can't read any politics in this. The endorsement of Museveni for Raila is political. So how can you say there is no politics here?
But we can base it still on these headlines, the fact that even the conversation is within ODM itself. And
yes, exactly. And the point is, we are putting the cart before the horse, because the conversation that is going on is an excitement that Raila will be elected as a chair of the AU Commission. I think that's too early, because a lot of pundits will tell you that there are many hurdles other than this particular one. But the reason we are doing this, we are creating Sokomjinga politics, Sokomjinga campaign politics, so that we can push the center and everybody to support this.
Don't you see it as an attempt to fill that position that may be created by the NADCO report of official leader of opposition, given the fact that the AU elections will have to wait until next year? Raila Odinga, if at all, is still gunning for the AU and that position comes earlier, he would not legitimately go for it.
Exactly what I mean. That this conversation has nothing to, the conversation of Kalonzo Musyoka and all that has nothing to do with filling the shoes that are not empty, because the shoes are still there. It's like inheriting somebody who's still alive. You know, African culture is not the right thing to do. So hence, these are Sokomjinga politics to ensure that this conversation goes around in this country so that anybody else, because it's an obvious fact that there are other people who are looking at the position, at a possibility of vying for this position in Kenya. And remember, the East African community will have to present one leader, one person, to vie for this position, so that the presidents can actually be able to endorse him quicker. Who are his opponents? The ones that have shown interest. Is a vice chair of AU Commission. Is a lady from Rwanda. Education credentials, Raila can't even touch. The fact that she's been there is somebody who's already sitting there is interested. Is from East Africa, so that's Kagame. In Tanzania, Jakaya Kikwete is interested. In Djibouti, there's a former prime minister who is interested. So hence it's a bigger issue for Raila to be able to get there, because there's also even a whole situation of education. Not the fact that
but it is a political.
Not the fact that people question his credentials, but in the requirement for education, the master's required is specified. It doesn't include.
There's a rider at the bottom.
It doesn't include engineering.
There's a very simple line at the bottom of that page.
No,
and they say that all this can change for one reason or another. Yes.
But peerage means you are a president.
Are you saying that Raila Odinga does not stand?
The hurdles are so many that the conversation of replacing him in Azimio, it's before its time. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but I'll ask you to talk about opposition politics.
Yes. Let me talk about the opposition politics. One, I think it is totally unfair for ODM to give such conditions to Kalonzo. Remember, Kalonzo had been promised that Raila would support him in 2022 elections. That's what, under the bridge, they invited him for an interview, subjected him to a lot of humiliation, still didn't give him they didn't give him the number 2, but still Kalonzo delivered in terms of votes more than the debut. So it is totally unfair for the opposition to start mishandling Kalonzo, saying that he should lead demonstration. What is the cause of leading a demonstration or throwing stones or causing damage to property? The best thing would be, what would Kalonzo offer in terms of his leadership to the opposition? Those are the questions. But
Do you think it's time for that brand of opposition politics? We've not had it in a very long time.
But you see, the issue is leading a demonstration and throwing stones is not a measure of an opposition. But you see, you can oppose government, you can lead opposition from inside parliament.
The only other opposition leader we've had, probably away from Raila Odinga, was Uhuru Kenyatta during President Mwai Kibaki's time, and that was a different brand of opposition politics. Are we saying we are ripe for a shift to the Kalonzo Musyoka brand of opposition leadership?
Nothing has been achieved through adversarial politics. But I mean, if people can have a conversation about their country, and our politics is not the best, because the results we just produce, sometimes people are elected that you wonder how they became, how they got elected into those positions. And as my friend Mwadat said, democracy instead of meritocracy. You know, like I've started what is happening in China. Before you are elected, they use merit, and you start from the counties and from the provinces where you are elected on merit. And I mean, it's now your state that can endorse you for national leadership, and there must be a proven track record that you are able to do certain things at the helm of leadership. I mean, it's a tested way of, but here we just declare a seat vacant, everybody goes, and democracy says the guy with the highest number of votes is the winner. Even if a mad person is declared a leader, that is what you are going to live with.
Okay.
So, I mean, it is, we must interrogate ourselves as Kenyans.
Okay. But Orogo, is opposition being genuine, even as you answer, are they being genuine? Because the requirement and even the talk about this office, the proposed office of the official leader of opposition, is that it was going to be filled by the person who came second in the presidential election. Ideally, in his absence, it should be the person who deputized or the person who was a running mate. When you see this kind of discussions happening, even the proposal that Kalonzo Musyoka could be the one to occupy that position, is that a genuine conversation?
Yes, it is. It should be a genuine conversation, politically speaking, because one of the things that we are actually seeing is the lack of a proper transition in opposition politics and transition to leadership. Should the opposition leader now assumes the role at the continental level. And this is what I was proposing, Fred. Perhaps we put ourselves into the mind of the opposition. What happens if, for example, we are into this opposition politics, Raila's absence, and then the government now begins to have a freeway in terms of passing the laws using majority in the House, laws that are not tenable, for example, to Kenya. I'm just saying, perhaps I'm assuming.
My question is because are we going to subject, if at all that office is established, are we going to subject ourselves to an election within the opposition to elect someone who is to occupy that? It should be automatic that if at all you came second in the presidential election, you get it. In your absence, your running mate occupies that position. I mean
that has been ideally clear, because now it goes back to exactly what was the opposition's coalition agreement. You know, these are some of the things that keeps coming back to haunt the opposition politics. Remember, again, we are here because in 2013, post-2013, Kalonzo said that there was an agreement. You know, post-2017, there was an agreement. So his has been into the issue that, you see, the agreement that we deposited to agree with how we run the opposition politics has been thrown apart when it comes to succession politics. So I think it is quite a correct time for the opposition politics to sit and agree and look at those particular guidelines that they agreed on, because in the absence of this, it's creating a vacuum as to what really, who and when occupies the position. I foresee, that's what I said here before, ideally see a situation where if it was agreed that, for example, because they were being briefed on the proceedings of the NADCO report, I assume there was an update.
Musyoka himself led that.
Yes, there was an update report on the direction that report was taking.
Could this be so the proposal to have office of official leader of opposition? Could it turn out to be the poison chalice for this opposition? The fact that they will start fighting on who to occupy that position. Yet it was straightforward. When Raila Odinga was there, everyone knew he would occupy. With his exit,
we are debating Nakada. The report, is it called Nakada or something? NADCO.
It has already been adopted by the National Assembly. We cannot ignore
and it's going to be discussed.
So discussed
yes.
by Parliament.
And it's not law.
That document, in its proposals, require constitutional changes. Constitutional changes require referendum. So we are talking about maybe a referendum after that debate. Then a framework is done. Then preparation for referendum. So you're talking about 2026. Meaning that if there is a position of official position that is created, it's not now.
But there are those who argue that some of these proposed offices probably, because it's yet to be tested, it probably would go to the Supreme Court, that some of those would simply go through the parliamentary route.
So the point is, it will happen in 2026, 2027. So you're talking about an opposition leader in parliament, in the next parliament, not this one. And by 2027, Kalonzo Musyoka would want to vie for presidency because he's already declared his interest. If peradventure Baba goes to AU as chairman of AU Commission, chances are he would want to come back and vie for presidency in 2027. Nothing stops him. He will resign and just come back and vie for that. So it's a long drawn thing. What I'd said earlier, that these are policies that are being created to hype up the whole candidature of Raila Odinga to ensure that everybody knows and thinks that he is already the AU commission. That nothing stops between him and the end goal of becoming the AU commission chair. Now, the reason why Kalonzo is being fought is because, you see, there's always been a question of him participating in demonstration. We've seen a situation where they were with Raila very closely. They talked about it. They went to press conferences and they were gung-ho about it. But when it came to the streets, our man, they say he's a coward. He's not. He's a diplomat. He questions that by destroying people's property, are we going to gain anything? At the end of the day, I can hear someone laughing, saying, no, he's a coward. No, he's not. I wouldn't say that. His choice of how he approaches it. And he's being tested as to whether he can actually be able to take over from Baba, whether it's now or after 2027, after the next election, Baba the sixth, after the Baba's the sixth situation, can he take over after that? And that's the question that is coming up. Now, the people that are doing that, remember, are ODM members. And if you read that article, the wiper people have come out loudly and said, look, what are you talking about? He's our leader. We like his leadership style. Everybody doesn't have to have the same style. And a measure of leadership, as per the wipers, the way I've read it, is that being a leader doesn't mean that you have to be combative. You can be a negotiating leader. But, Fred, the shoes are not empty.
They're not empty yet.
And chances are they're not going to get empty.
Okay. Do you believe that the shoes are not yet empty, Wanaboit? It looks to most Kenyans that it's a done deal. That once Raila Odinga gets the president's endorsement and a few leaders from the region, then it's as good as done.
If Raila Odinga ascends to the chairmanship of African Union, he will serve for a term of 4 years, from next year. Meaning his term will come to an end when he's 83 years old. Also, age is catching up with Raila.
And that will be after 2027?
Yes.
Unless he resigns?
And his term ends in 2028. So if Raila chooses to come back to the Kenyan politics, no problem. If he chooses to end his political career as African Union chairman, that is also a welcome move. But beyond the politics, I see, one, our influence beyond East Africa growing. I see us closing ranks as a country, and I think it would be important that, all these NATCO reports and many other reports are of no use to me. What we have is to get down to serious business of governing this country. What we have is to stop the wastage and focus on what is needed to move our country forward. Nothing else.
Yet the NATCO report has already been adopted by the motion has already,
that report,
the National Assembly.
It remains a report.
Yes.
It is adopted. It has to be made a law. And that law, an act of parliament cannot, if they are doing an amendment of the constitution, it needs 2/3. And you know how difficult it is even to get 2/3, even for the gender and other issues. Now, anything that changes the structure of government in this country needs a referendum. As my friend said, there's also a challenge that we don't have an IBC in place. So it means we are talking of a marriage, something that we cannot even reach. So I mean, all these issues, and you can see, if only people got serious with the business of governing and oversight, and not doing useless meetings outside Parliament, and taking those who are charged with the responsibilities of helping Kenyans, we'll be very far.
Fred,
final word on this.
The picture you posted here of Honorable Raila and Ruto, take it to the bank, that is the beginning of a conversation on a constitutional reform process and change. Be very real as it is. We get to how reality of Kenyan politics is. This is the beginning of restructuring a number of things, including what the Star made yesterday about the possibilities of cabinet reshuffle. Begin to understand this is the beginning of a relationship. This morning, the president is expected to be in Homa Bay to bring goodies to the region that opposed him. What is that meaning for the opposition politics? You asked. It means that right now, the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka is left with the task of reshaping the opposition politics. The disquiet that is within ODM is a disquiet that is coming out of an orphaned politics. There is no leader now that is in ODM. Ido Dinga was threw their works into the spanner by proposing Honorable Mbadi. What does that mean? That is Odinga's family proposing a successor. Can we be very real? Honorable Raila's term, if at all, he goes to the AU Commission. Like my colleague says, he serves a term of 4 years. Let's say it's 2025. He goes until 2029. We have an election in 2027. The principle, looking at the AU Constitutive Chapter on Article 4, it bars anyone in that office from participating in their politics, even in your own country politics, or the politics of another country. So by all means, that is why I kept saying here, sometimes you're on the table, we are looking at ideal politics, but sometimes you also talk about the realities of politics in this country. Is that when Raila ascends to the AU Chairman Commission, issues of Kenyan politics, he will not be involved, because that is the principle of what that demands. However, my colleague was saying that, you see, he could resign and contest. He can't contest in the 2027 election if he goes. And that is why I said this is a long, drawn-con game between these people. Raila is taken out of the Kenyan politics.
He's out.
He's out. If he accepts that position, forget about him being in the Kenyan politics. We need now to think about opposition. And that's why you think Matthew was saying this conversation, I think is the right of this conversation. Why? Because we are talking about reconstituting IEBC. These two coalitions were in the NADCO report. Without their approvals, it is not going to be tenable in that. We don't have a parliament. We don't have, I told you, judiciary is in onslaught. Where else are we going to get an opposition politics that puts government into shape if Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka is not given the mandate to lead the reshaping of the opposition politics? Okay,
all right. And as we wrap up the discussion, I'd like us to focus on the very last discussion briefly on the drugs disaster. It's on the front page of the Standard today. We always talk about politics, but it's good as well sometimes to focus on some issues that affect the country. Now, they say data from government reveals that war against drug and alcohol abuse is far from over. The risk of youth getting trapped in the addiction is more real than many have imagined. From the figures, they say the Deputy President ought to take the fight to the coast and to Nairobi, not just his central Kenya backyard, because the numbers speak different. The national rate of abuse 2.5%, male 4.8%, urban 3.6%, but the worst affected, Nairobi and the coast. Now, we've seen, of course, the renewed war against illicit alcohol and drug trafficking and all these other vices that affect the youth mostly. It is a commendable move, but are we approaching it the right way? Because on one hand, it would appear we still expect the same enforcement agencies to remedy the problem that they're also accused of perpetrating themselves. Alex Mwathi, let's start with you today with your final comments as you speak on this.
I think the drugs disaster in this country is portrayed very graphically by a video that was doing social media rounds yesterday. Of a young man in Mombasa on Utange Road who had a panga and stepped onto somebody's car and started smashing the windscreen. Fortunately, there are people who are around him, and there's a lady who was wailing. I suspect that is the mother. When the young people pulled him down, they took too long to pull him down because already had damaged the car, and then they started beating him up. And I felt so sad because he wasn't doing that out of whatever. It's because of the drug addiction. So that's a picture of addiction in this country. That is a bad situation, as it were. And for me, there has been talk about who are the kingpin of drug trafficking in this country, including people like the United States of America, actually pinpointing some of our leaders as part of that game. And sometimes you get convinced that it is so because a guy produces 1 or 2 songs, they become a bit famous, so circulation of 1 million, 2 million of that on YouTube and all that. And all of a sudden the guy is a multi-billionaire. He's flashing money all over. And people now assume that it could be that. It's a menace. It's a disaster waiting to happen. When you talk about illicit brew, is it brewed in hidden places? No. Fred, let's go to Congo Kawangware, and I'll take you to a brewery, a Changa brewery, that uses methanol and all these other chemicals. And government officials, I have no qualms mentioning this on public television because it's a fact, I know. Police vehicles come there, continues to collect their pay. So these illicit brews are not happening. First is a drug menace that our leaders have been accused to be part of the cartels. We have done nothing. Number 2 is an illicit brew that people watch when it's being done. The police and everybody knows where it's brewed. The chiefs know. It can be or whatever. But at the same time, you also criminalize things that Africans have done for many years. You know, your Buza from Western Kenya, Muratina from Central Kenya. You demonize those ones, yet you almost keep an eye when these other ones are being distributed. It's a big disaster, and yes, the government need to be more serious in terms of the approach. Have a better strategy to do that. First of all, if you are going to finish the drug menace, if anybody is accused of drug trafficking, and especially by somebody from outside, meaning that they have done their own investigation, that guy should be arrested, and the punishments should be such that nobody else will attempt to do that. You know what they do in China? And I'm not advocating for that.
They hang you.
Boom, you're shot, you're hanged. Because China have appreciated what we haven't appreciated, that you have one drug trafficker who traffics in cocaine or these other drugs. The effect of that is death for the youth. Okay. Is death for the future of the country. And they have no excuse. You go to Malaysia, life imprisonment. They don't even need to go to court. You have the drugs in life imprisonment. Okay. And that's the kind of thing that we need to have. That's these things that the deputy is trying to say, shut down bars, you know, we came up with the shut bars at 5 o'clock. Are they the ones that really are big a menace? No. It's a changa that is taken on the side shows that the chief knows.
So we are missing the point.
We are missing the point.
Okay. Bonaboit?
Now, the sad reality of Kenya is that no institution is working. Where is the NIS? Where is the National Police Service? Where is the provincial administration? Where are our KEPs and NACADA officials when all this abuse is being made? Sometimes somebody is arrested in Dubai or in India that he came through JKIA with drugs. What happens to the people who are manning the scanners at JKIA or the officials who are doing the verification before people left the country? I mean, is there a consequence for those people that they allowed drugs to be moved through a sensitive facility like KKIA? The answer is, we long stopped working as a country. All these institutions of government, if they only get serious, because, you know, like those local or whatever, like the alcohol, which are made of ethanol, I mean, they are made in full view of, I mean, with full knowledge of the people around, because there's presence of government everywhere, from the area assistant chief, to the chief, to the police, to the NACADA officials, to members of public. So people volunteer the information to police that this is what is happening here. And then the people are arrested, they give a bribe, they are released. So next people will not even report it. Just the same way, if you ask the Inspector General what is his work as Inspector General, and you see traffic policemen collecting bribes, even today when I came in the morning at a few minutes to 6, they were already stopping matatus, and I would see them collecting bribes, and without no consequences, in full uniform. I mean, those are the issues we are faced with as a country, and I think those charged with the responsibility of governing should take their work seriously.
Okay. Finally, Daniel.
I agree. I would like to take a different point, that whatever my two colleagues have talked about are deterrent measures to deter. In the crime triangle, there's a desire, there's a will, and then there's an opportunity to do that. Talking as a young person, the government has embarked on deterrence measures. You know, you get caught, you face punitive action. Where is then the opportunity to try to intervene on the softwares of this? Can we look at this whole situation about what is guiding the moral compass of young people? Because we are talking about the youth who are the major casualties of this particular disaster. We should be considered now a national disaster, and that the whole government machinery should actually embark on, trying to curb this, threat. And so I agree on this crime situation, that the dichotomy of it, what is beneath those who are promoting the drug trafficking. There's an opportunity for drug traffickers taking advantage of the hopeless young people that are facing structural challenges. Some that are due to their economic situation, some are that due to their, upbringing and socialization, and a number of factors. So indeed, it is for us as a whole society, and to put in our experts, put in sociologists to look at what is the sociological aspect, put on the psychologists to look at what is the psychological issues that are, what is the political aspects of this issue. Finally, Fred, it mirrors, unfortunately, we are mourning the death of Peter Morgan, one of the lead vocalists for Morgan Heritage, who actually led and seeing that look all around you, there is nothing to smile about. In this country, looking at the whole situation that is now being asked here, what is it to smile about when we are losing a next generation to negligence that we could as well deter? And lastly, please, let us mourn with families that lost their loved ones on the tragic accident yesterday in Machakos. I mean, it's also to look upon what is the safety of our roads, what are we doing about the issues, our athletes that are now even dying on road accidents, and everyone. Traveling has now become a major dangerous way, another way to die in this country. So I think with that, Fred, it forms part of our state of the nation to look at all these issues around our safety, security as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel Orogo. Indeed, the headline of the Standard talks about the drugs disaster, and it goes ahead to give figures and raise questions about the kind of approach that our leaders have adopted. Thank you so much, Alex Mwathi, political analyst, Barnabas Kiplagat Boit, political strategist and advisor, and Daniel Orogo, political analyst, our panelists this morning as we look at the state of the nation. And now straight to editorial comment this morning. Now, in a stirring display of leadership, senior government officials have ignited a renewed fervor in the battle against the spread of illicit alcohol and narcotics. Yesterday, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua chaired the Coast Region Conference on illicit alcohol and narcotic drugs abuse in Mombasa, which brought together top government administrators to identify ways of tackling the problem. The gravity of the situation cannot be overstated. Lives have been lost, communities ravaged, and futures jeopardized due to the devastating effects of addiction, especially in the Mount Kenya region and the coast. However, amidst the commendable efforts lies a lingering concern, the fear that these discussions might amount to nothing more than empty rhetoric, devoid of tangible outcomes. We cannot afford for these conferences to be mere talk shops, yielding no substantive action or lasting change. The stakes are too high, and the consequences too dire to allow for complacency or half-hearted measures. It is, for instance, a bitter pill to swallow that senior administrators entrusted with the responsibility of upholding law and order may have been complicit in perpetuating the very problem they now purport to combat. Reports of corruption and collusion within law enforcement, where officials turn a blind eye to illicit activities in exchange for bribes, cast a dark shadow over the efficacy of our efforts to